Thanks for watching Numbskull News. And I know this is a weird way to start the video. You can't even see me. And I know some of you are saying thank you for that. Well, we're going to fix that pretty quick. Here are the contenders, I believe, that are left in the CFP playoff race. And we're going to start eliminating teams right off the bat. Let's start with the Big 12 and Arizona State. Now, Arizona State, they're 7-2, and they have Kansas State, BYU, and Arizona. They're going to drop at least another game. I think we can safely eliminate them. But, hey, great season for Arizona. Iowa State, man, losing to Kansas is horrendous. And they still have Cincinnati, who's not a joke. Utah, I don't know how they're going to be when they getting beat by BYU by one freaking point, a comeback. Crazy holy war. But Kansas, and then Kansas State, the Farmageddon at the end of the year. Someone's going to 3 losses. Iowa State may get there before then. I'm eliminating them. And then Kansas State, they got Arizona State, Cincinnati, and Iowa State. That is a hell of a trifecta to end the year on. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to finish this thing off 10-2. If they do, they would get to the title game because they have the tiebreaker over Colorado. But I don't trust them, so I'm eliminating them. There we are. A little better now. Okay. Let's keep going now. Let's talk about the ACC. Clemson. Clemson could end up running the table. They have Pitt, Citadel, and South Carolina. Now look, South Carolina is kind of the Houston of the SEC. All right, they come out of nowhere and beat teams. Ask A&M about that. However, if you look at SMU, all right, let's look at what SMU has left. They have Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. All right, that's a doable schedule. They should be 11-1. Miami, insane. They lost to Georgia Tech. They are the Houston of the ACC. It's insane. But Miami has Wake Forest and Syracuse. Syracuse is not the easiest of games, but they should be able to finish 11-1. As a matter of fact, I have them both finishing 11-1. And at 10-2 Clemson, even if they get to 10-2, they don't match up with the rest of these 10-2 teams. I'm sorry that they don't have the resume, so I'm going to eliminate them. Pitt right now is 7-2. They got Clemson, Louisville, Boston College. They're dropping at least one more game. I'm eliminating them. So we got the Big 12. We got the ACC set. Now, let's go to Notre Dame. Now, I have forgotten about Notre Dame. Every time I make one of these type of videos, I forget about Notre Dame. Well, I'm not forgetting about them today. All right, let's look at Notre Dame's resume. Their top win was Texas A&M by 10 points. Pretty damn good. They beat Louisville. Not a bad win. Navy, they smoked Navy. You could say, well, come on, that's just an American team. That's a service academy. Well, I'm going to give the service academy a little bit of credit. Blowout win is nice for Notre Dame. And they blew out Georgia Tech for what it's worth. That's their top wins. Now, they only got 1 loss, but it is Northern Illinois. I mean, it might as well be 2 losses. That's not good. But who do they have left? They have Virginia, which is not a cupcake. They got Army, who's better than Navy. They've been crushing teams. I love Army. As a matter of fact, I'll say it right now. I'm picking them to win against Notre Dame. And then they got USC on the road. They're going to LA to play USC. I believe they're going to drop another game. And a 10-2 Notre Dame, with one of those losses being Northern Illinois, they're gone. So I don't think they have a shot. Now, there are scenarios where if they run the table, they're in, and I'm going to address that later on in the video. The Big Ten. All 4 of these teams are getting in. I said that weeks ago, but I still tried to say, look, let's see what Ohio State does. Well, what did they do? They won. They beat Penn State. Penn State, they may have trouble with Minnesota, but even if they do, a 10-2 Penn State is getting in. Oregon, they're probably undefeated the rest of the way they're in. Indiana, they may very well lose to Ohio State and not get in. And look, that's going to be an interesting game. Here's the stakes of Indiana versus Ohio State. The winner will be in the conference championship with Oregon. But regardless, all 4, regardless of what happens the rest of the way, unless someone completely shits the bed, which I don't think any of these teams are going to do, all 4 are getting into the playoff. Now, let's go to the SEC. Let's just start with A&M. They're going to lose to Texas at the end of the year. I just don't think they got the guns to do it. I know that's going to be a highly contested game. They're going to fight their ass off. They absolutely hate Texas. And Texas hates them. But Texas is just more talented. So I'm going to ixnay them. The next one I'm going to ixnay is Mizzou. Their best win is Vanderbilt. And you can say, well, look, their 2 losses are not bad losses. Alabama and A&M aren't bad losses. No, but they got blown out by A&M. And not just blown out by Alabama, they got shut out. There's no path for Mizzou. They're gone. Now, these other teams I cannot eliminate. All right. One of these is going to be the SEC champ. One of them is going to get there. But the runner-up, I mean, if it's Ole Miss and they already got 2 losses and they lose to Texas, are they in? I don't think they are. Not with 10-3. Same thing with Georgia. Same thing with Alabama. I don't know if they are automatically in with 3 losses. Even the 3rd loss being in the SEC title game. I don't know if that happens. Since we have the main contenders in this whole thing, let's address how many spots are going to be left. Now, it's going to be Indiana, Oregon, or Ohio State that's going to be the Big Ten champ. Penn State will not get in. Not to the title game, they won't. One of these is going to be the champ, and they will get the automatic qualifier. The other 3, whichever ones they are going to get the first 3 at-large bids. That's how that's going to work for the Big Ten. They're automatically in. I'm using Texas as an example. That's my pick to win the SEC. It was from the first part of the year. It's still on track to be that way. So I'm going to use them as an example of the SEC champ. They're in. Miami, it could be SMU. Easily, SMU could beat Miami. This is a toss-up game. I'm just going to use Miami as my starting point here as the ACC champ. I'm using Colorado as the example of the Big 12 champ because that's the only way. With Iowa State losing, that's the only way for the Big 12 to have more than just one team in the playoff. Colorado has to go undefeated the rest of the way in the regular season, get to the title game, and then win. Because if they can get to the conference title game, but they lose to BYU, then they're going to be out at 10-3. There's no question about it. They'll be out. Unless insane, absurd, unseeable things happen. That's the way it's looking right now. So I'm going to use them as the example of the Big 12 champ for the exercise of this video, trying to get 2 teams from the Big 12 in. And then we got Army. I'm using them as the example of the G5 champ. I know Boise State is ranked higher, but Army is undefeated. And if they beat Notre Dame, and I think they can, I picked them to beat Notre Dame. If they pull that off, they will be the G5 champ that gets into the playoff. Now we got to talk about this game right here. For the Big 12 and the playoffs, Tennessee versus Georgia. That's coming up. This is the biggest game for the Big 12. The most consequential game for the Big 12 there is. And here's why. Because depending on who wins, the chances of the Big 12 getting more than one team go up or down. And right now, if you're a Big 12 fan, you better be a Tennessee fan. Because if Tennessee wins, they will eliminate Georgia from the playoffs. Because at 9-3, Georgia ain't getting in. You know, all apologies to the Bulldog faithful out there. But this year, there's just too many contenders. There's too many good teams. But if Georgia beats Tennessee, all right, Tennessee's a 2-loss team. Georgia will have the tiebreaker, of course, above Tennessee at that point. However, there's Ole Miss, who has the tiebreaker above Georgia. So you have to ask, if Georgia beats Tennessee, who's going to play Texas in the title game, the SEC title game? Is it going to be Tennessee? Or is it going to be Ole Miss? I don't know. I know it won't be Mizzou. I know that shit. You know, a 2-loss Tennessee will probably make the playoff. A 2-loss Georgia with wins against Texas, Clemson, and Tennessee, yeah, they are in the playoff. Ole Miss, with wins against Georgia, Arkansas, OU, tight losses to LSU and Kentucky. At 10-2, I think they would be in as well. However, if Tennessee eliminates Georgia and Tennessee plays Texas for that SEC title game, all right, regardless if Tennessee loses or not, they would still be only a 2-loss team, with the second loss being in the SEC title game. So Texas and Tennessee would be in. But regardless of any scenario, I believe Alabama is in no matter what. Their schedule they have left is Mercer, OU, and Auburn. They are sweeping that thing. They're going to be 10-2 at the end of the season. You look at their resume. Think of what you want about the Clemson Tide. I am no fan of Bama. However, they blew out LSU. And they didn't just blow out Mizzou, who's right now a 2-loss team, but they shut them out. They beat Georgia, and for what it's worth, they blew out Wisconsin, and I'm going to give them a little bit of credit for blowing out WKU, who's one of the top, 7, 10 G5 teams in the country. So I'm going to give them a smidge of credit for that. They did lose to Vanderbilt, and they did lose to Tennessee. But, Vanderbilt's not a bad team, and Tennessee's one of the top teams in the country as well. So that's a fantastic resume. They're 10-2. They're getting in. I don't give a damn. The CFP committee will put them in. Best case scenario for the Big 12 getting 2 teams in. Like I said, Colorado has to beat BYU. That's the starting point. BYU, they have to run the table too. The best case scenario is for them to be undefeated going into the conference title game and then losing to Colorado. Or whomever, but it's probably going to be Colorado. The second part of this best case scenario is Tennessee goes on the road to Georgia and eliminates them from playoff contention. So in that case, here are the 3 teams left, I believe, to get those final 2 spots. And if what I say is true, BYU would have the best record. At that point, they'd be a 1-loss team, and their only loss is in a conference championship game to Colorado. That's better than Ole Miss, and that's better than SMU. Because if SMU gets beaten by Miami, they're now a 2-loss team. But let me give you BYU's resume. Best wins, Kansas State. Close game against SMU. And you can throw Baylor in there. They're above 500 with a close win. And also the Holy War. You can't discount the Holy War. That means something. And their only loss would be to Colorado, who would be the Big 12 champ in this scenario. Now, Ole Miss, best win, of course, is blowing out Georgia. They also have blowout wins against Arkansas and OU. They mean a little bit, not a great deal. They have a close loss to Kentucky that doesn't look great, and a close loss to LSU, which looks a little better. But I think when you bring up the resumes, BYU stands out. And then for that 4th spot, it would be between SMU and Ole Miss. SMU's resume, blowout win against Pitt. They had a close win against Duke. They beat Louisville by 7 points. They blew out TCU. And their only losses would be, a 3-point loss to BYU and then losing the title game to Miami. I think when you put up the resume, personally, I would put SMU in. I would have them in there as the 12th team. However, you're talking the CFP committee, so it could very well be Ole Miss. I'm just saying, I don't know how much they respect SMU. I would put SMU in this scenario as a TCU fan. I would put SMU in over Ole Miss, but with the committee, it would probably be Ole Miss. Just saying, which would give the SEC 4 teams. And that's the best case scenario for the Big 12. Now, the worst case scenario, this would suck. Georgia beats Tennessee, and at that point, either Tennessee or Ole Miss faces Texas. But here's another big problem for BYU at that point. As part of the worst case scenario, Notre Dame runs the table. I don't think they will, but if they do and they finish the season 11-1 as an independent, no conference title game, it won't matter. They're getting into the playoff. And here's the thing. Tennessee or Ole Miss, whichever one gets to that title game with Texas, and if they beat Texas, what does that mean? But let's just say Ole Miss gets to play Texas and they beat Texas. So this is what happens. Let me just try to clarify this as best as I can. Ole Miss is at that point the SEC title winner. They get the automatic qualifier. Texas falls to 10-2, but they will get an at-large, and so will Notre Dame. So even if BYU runs the table, goes undefeated during the regular season, but loses the conference championship game, they will get left out. That's what happens. So that's the worst case scenario. Now, there are many scenarios that can happen. And as the weeks clip on, the next 3 weeks clip on, and we get to the end of the season, because I'm going to keep making these videos every week, because too much crap's happening. Too many teams get upset. Shit goes down, and it changes the playoff outlook. So I will make a video every week to the end of the season about this. And then, of course, I'm going to make a video about the CFP, who gets in, who doesn't. So we'll see what happens there. But right now, the Big 12 still has its shot for 2 teams. 3, that's done. There is no 3 teams. There was always, it was only, just a small chance of that happening anyway. But Iowa State, they kind of, they kind of eliminated that third option. Right now, the Big 12 still has a shot for 2. There's a realistic shot. There's a path. There's a couple of pathways. But whoever plays BYU, and I hate to say it, I'm going to be the biggest BYU fan for their next 3 games. But once it comes to the conference title game, we got to root against BYU. I hate to do that. These guys deserve to win the Big 12. They've been the best team of the Big 12 this year. They absolutely deserve it. But if you want 2 teams in, then Colorado or whomever, but probably Colorado, is going to have to get into that title game and beat them. Be the Big 12 champ and get in there. Then BYU has a shot at an at-large. Unless the worst case scenario comes about. So, root for Tennessee. That's all I'm saying. That's the biggest one. Root for Tennessee. Because if Georgia wins, it gets tougher for the Big 12 with two teams. Bottom line. That's the math. That's the pathways that are there. Anyway, thanks for watching this crap, and I'll be back with some more crap later. Bye.